I came home without warning. My last mission was finally behind me, 40 years of service, and all I wanted was to see my son. But instead, I found out he was lying alone in the intensive care unit, while my daughter-in-law was partying with friends on a yacht in the Sea of Cortez. The moment I heard, I froze every account she had access to. An hour later, she completely lost her mind. I'm glad you're here. Stay with me until the end and tell me what city you're watching from. I want to know how far this story travels. I stepped into La Paz International Airport just as the sun broke over the horizon, spilling a golden light through the terminal's glass walls. At my feet rested my old military suitcase, corners worn, leather scuffed, a faithful companion through decades of service. On my wrist, my father's pocket watch gave a soft, familiar vibration with every movement, as if reminding me of the promise I made in my youth, always come home. That promise had never felt heavier. I was 61, newly retired after a lifetime with the Mexican Marines. From hostage rescues in Houston to endless days evacuating survivors after earthquakes, my entire adult life had been missions, orders, and duty. But today, I just wanted to be a mother again. I couldn't wait to hug my son, Miguel. After so many years apart, I wheeled my suitcase out of baggage claim with the same precision I'd carried on the field. The morning sun was already fierce as I raised my hand for a taxi. Calle Las Palmas, number 420, please, I told the driver, my voice steady, though inside, my heart was pounding like waves against the shore. I pictured Miguel opening the door with that radiant smile, sitting together at the kitchen table, catching up on everything I'd missed. In 30 minutes, I'd be there. The radio played updates from the Navy reports I used to follow religiously, but now, they meant nothing. Just yesterday, I'd completed my final strategic advisory mission for NATO, an anti-terrorism operation in South America. 4 decades of intercepting arms trafficking, sleepless jungle nights, and perilous borders, all behind me now. I stared out the taxi window at the infinite blue ocean, sunlight glittering over the waves like fragments of memory pulling me back to those days. But my mind was only on Miguel and the little home where I had poured so many hopes. The driver took the familiar coastal road lined with swaying palms, just as they had been the day I left. But when we pulled up to Miguel's house, my stomach sank. The house was dark. Curtains drawn. Not a single light inside. I hauled my suitcase up to the porch, a knot of unease tightening in my chest. I rang the bell. The chime echoed into the silence. No answer. I knocked harder. Still nothing. Stepping into the yard, I noticed the mailbox stuffed with letters and flyers, papers strewn along the walkway. It was as if no one had been home for weeks. My heartbeat quickened. Something was wrong. I had been sending money every month on time to Miguel and his wife, Valeria, trusting that they were fine. That my son was living comfortably. But staring at that lifeless house, doubt crept in. That's when I spotted Dona Teresa, Miguel's neighbor, watering flowers across the street. She'd lived here since I was young, always kind, always with a story about the neighborhood kids. Dona Teresa, I called. Her head shot up, eyes wide in surprise. Valentina, my God, you're back. But, you don't know? A tremor ran through my legs as I crossed to her. Know what? Where is Miguel? I asked, fighting to keep my voice from breaking. She set her watering can down, her eyes soft with pity. Miguel has been in San Rafael Hospital for 2 weeks. The ambulance came in the middle of the night. I saw the logo clear as day. She hesitated, then lowered her voice. And Valeria. I saw on social media she's on a yacht in the Sea of Cortez. Her words hit me like a physical blow. My son, in the hospital for weeks. My daughter-in-law, the woman I trusted to care for him, partying on the open sea. I felt the blood drain from my face, my heart pounding in painful bursts. Do you know where San Rafael Hospital is? I asked, my voice hoarse. She nodded, giving me quick directions. I didn't waste a second. I stepped into the street, waving down another taxi. San Rafael Hospital, fast as you can, I ordered the driver. 100 questions swirled in my head. What had happened to Miguel? And how could Valeria be celebrating while her husband lay in a hospital bed? I clutched my father's pocket watch so tightly my knuckles turned white. Miguel, the boy who used to chase me along the beach, who would wrap his arms around me every time I returned from deployment, was now fighting for his life. And I, the mother who had dedicated herself to protecting her country, hadn't even known he needed me. Guilt burned in my chest for the months, the years I'd sent only money, believing it was enough. Now, I only wanted one thing: to reach my son. To see him. To know he was alive. The taxi pulled up to San Rafael Hospital. The midday sun blinded me as I stepped out. I paid the driver, dragged my suitcase inside, and forced myself to steady my breathing. The lobby was a storm of voices, footsteps, and announcements over the intercom, a chaotic symphony I could barely hear over the sound of my own racing heart. I went straight to the reception desk, where a young nurse was flipping through patient files. "I'm looking for Miguel Perez," I said, my voice dry and strained, each word feeling heavier than the last. She glanced up, met my eyes for a brief moment, then scanned her papers quickly. "He's in intensive care. 5th floor, room 512, she replied in a flat, routine tone. I didn't even have time to thank her. I rushed toward the elevator. "Please, hold the door," I called out as I saw it about to close. A middle-aged man reached out to stop it, and I stepped into the narrow, sterile-smelling cabin. The sharp scent of disinfectant hit me so hard I had to swallow the urge to be sick. When the doors slid open on the 5th floor, a cold, silent corridor stretched out before me, its quiet broken only by the steady, haunting beep of medical machines. My old military boots struck the tiled floor with a dry, echoing thud as I hurried down the hallway. The door to room 512 was slightly ajar. A cold strip of white light spilled out from within, making me hesitate. I pushed it open slowly, almost afraid of breaking something fragile. And there he was. Miguel. Lying in a white hospital bed, surrounded by tubes and machines. His eyes were closed. His face pale, drawn, and so thin I barely recognized him. The respirator covered his mouth, each breath so faint I had to hold my own just to hear it. My chest ached. This was not my Miguel. Not the boy who used to chase me along the beach, nor the man who would hug me tight every time I returned from my long deployments. This was a shadow, a shattered version of my son. A doctor stood in the corner, his name tag reading Julian. He was focused on the monitors, his gaze steady but distant. He turned toward me. "Are you family?" he asked. I nodded, my voice breaking. "I'm his mother. Valentina." He gave a slight nod and gestured toward Miguel. "He has terminal stomach cancer. The situation is very serious. If it had been treated earlier, it might have been different." His words were calm, almost detached, but each one sliced into me like a knife. "Cancer. Terminal." I repeated them under my breath, trembling, unable to believe what I was hearing. An hour ago, I had imagined hugging him, hearing him laugh, telling me about his days without me. I thought I'd find him healthy, smiling. Not like this, trapped between machines. How did this happen? Why didn't anyone tell me? I pleaded. Dr. Julian shook his head, his expression softening just slightly. "No one has come to see him since he was admitted. We tried to contact family, but no one came." Those words hit me straight in the heart. Valeria, my daughter-in-law, the woman I had trusted to care for Miguel, where was she? Dona Teresa's words came back to me. The social media post. The yacht. The parties. The anger flared inside me, but the pain was stronger. I moved to the bed and took Miguel's cold hand in mine. His skin felt paper-thin, the blue veins stark beneath it. "Miguel, it's Mom," I whispered, fighting the tears. "I'm here now, Hijo." Suddenly, his lips moved. His eyelids trembled, and he opened his eyes, cloudy, but with that familiar glimmer. "Mema," he murmured, so softly I had to lean in to hear. "Mema, TMO." Before he could finish, the heart monitor let out a piercing, unbroken tone. "Miguel, no, Hijo," I cried, clutching his hand, but Dr. Julian was already moving, calling for nurses. "Out. Let us work," he ordered firmly. A nurse guided me into the hallway as the room erupted in urgent voices and beeping machines. I pressed my hands to my face, sobbing uncontrollably. "Please, don't take him," I whispered over and over, as if that could hold him here. Minutes later, the doctor stepped out, peeling off his gloves. He shook his head. "I'm so sorry. We did everything we could." The words drained the life out of me. My legs gave way, and I stumbled down the corridor, unable to look back at the white sheet they would soon pull over his face. Miguel was gone. I had just come home. I hadn't told him how much I loved him, or how sorry I was for leaving him alone. The hallway's cold white light felt like it was pressing down on me. My hands shook as I pulled out my phone and dialed Valeria. Music blasted in the background when she answered, laughter, clinking glasses, voices. "What?" she said flatly. I took a deep breath, trying to keep my voice steady. "Miguel died." There was silence for a few seconds. Then her voice came back, casual, almost bored. "Okay. I'm busy. We'll talk later." And she hung up. I stood there, frozen. The phone slipped from my hand, clattering to the floor. No questions. No sadness. She was at a party, while my son had just taken his last breath. I turned and walked toward the hospital's front doors. Outside, the sun was blazing, but I felt nothing but cold. A cold that cut straight to my bones. I had lost Miguel. And now I knew I had also lost my faith in the only person I once called family. Valeria had betrayed us in the cruelest way possible. The noon light hit my face as I stepped out, but inside, I was frozen and hollow. Each step felt heavy, as though I was fighting not to collapse. I don't remember how far I walked, only that I had to reach the administrative office to sign the death certificate. Death certificate. The words pounded in my head like a hammer, shattering whatever fragile hope I might have had left. My son, the boy I raised and loved with all my heart, was now reduced to a paper, a stamp, a name in the hospital's records. A young nurse with her hair pulled into a high ponytail handed me a clear plastic bag. "These are Mr. Perez's belongings," the nurse said softly, her voice quick and clipped from the rush of another busy day. My hands trembled as I took the clear plastic bag. Through the cloudy surface, I saw Miguel's wristwatch, the worn leather wallet I'd given him for his 20th birthday, and his phone with its scratched screen. I opened the wallet, searching for anything that still carried his touch. But it was empty. Only his ID cards remained, along with an old, creased photograph. It was us, on the beach. Miguel was just a boy, his smile radiant, a red kite gripped in his small hands. I pressed the photo to my chest, as if letting go would erase the memories forever. I also asked for Miguel's complete medical file. The nurse said she would call the doctor, and a moment later, Dr. Julian walked in, carrying a thick folder. "This is everything," he said, placing the stack of papers on the table. I turned the pages slowly. Admission dates. Lab results. And finally, the diagnosis. Gastric cancer. Terminal. Metastatic. The words blurred before my eyes. If he had come to us just a few months earlier, the doctor said quietly, he might have lived another year or two. But by the time he arrived, it was already too advanced. I nodded mutely, my chest tightening. 1 or 2 years. Time we could have had. Time I could have been here, watching over him. If I hadn't left everything in Valeria's hands, maybe my son would have had a fighting chance. "Who is listed as the primary contact?" I asked the nurse nearby, my voice raw. She checked her notepad. "Valeria Lopez." We called several times and sent messages, but we never heard back. Her answer struck me like a slap. Valeria, the same woman I had trusted with my son, the same woman I sent money to every month, had abandoned him. She hadn't even answered the hospital when they tried to reach her. I clenched my fists, my nails digging into my palms until I felt a sting. Just then, Miguel's phone buzzed inside the plastic bag. The screen lit up with her name, Valeria. My heart pounded. A part of me wanted to answer, wanted to scream at her, demand how she could be so cruel. But I didn't. I couldn't bear to hear that cold voice again. Not now. I let the phone ring until the light faded, then slipped the bag into my purse and walked out of the administrative office. From there, I went to the morgue, where they had taken Miguel to prepare him for the funeral. The clerk handed me a form to sign, authorizing the transfer to the military funeral home. I picked up the pen, but my hand shook so violently my signature came out like a scrawl. "Are you all right?" the man asked, concerned. I nodded. But I wasn't. How could I be? I had just lost my only son. When the paperwork was done, I left the morgue. Each step felt like dragging a boulder behind me. Outside, the midday sun scorched my shoulders, but all I felt was pain, sharp, hollow, endless. Pain for Miguel. For the lonely days he had spent without his mother by his side. For dying without a hand to hold. For the years I had been gone, lost in my missions, thinking that sending money was enough. I had made the worst mistake of my life, trusting Valeria. Her image flashed in my mind, cruel and vivid. I heard her curt voice again, the thump of loud music, the laughter over the sound of waves. She had used my money, Miguel's money, for yachts, for jewelry, while he lay dying. It wasn't just abandonment. It was indifference so cold it could cut through bone. I wanted to scream, to confront her, to ask her why. But I knew this wasn't the moment. First, I had to keep my head clear for Miguel's sake. I took out my phone and called Lieutenant Colonel Javier Ortega, an old friend from my years in the Marines, now working in the Military Financial Administration Agency. "Javier, I need to see you today," I said firmly, though tears were still streaming down my face. "Valentina, what happened?" "Are you all right?" he asked. "I'll tell you when I see you. Please, make it urgent." He didn't hesitate. "Come to my office late this afternoon." I hung up, feeling like I'd found the smallest foothold in the middle of this storm. I took a taxi back to Miguel's house, number 420, Calle Las Palmas. In the back seat, I gripped my father's pocket watch, the same one I'd carried for 40 years. It had always been my symbol of coming home. But now, I knew I had come back far too late. Standing at Miguel's door, I felt the ring of keys jingling softly in my hand as I searched for the right one. My fingers brushed against a small, cold key, the one I had kept all these years, a fragile thread tying me to my son. I opened the door, and the smell hit me immediately: dampness, stale air. The scent of a home left untended for too long. I flipped the light switch, and a weak yellow glow revealed the mess. Wine glasses with dried stains sat abandoned on the table. Dust coated the furniture. Empty takeout boxes were stacked in corners. I stood there, frozen. This had been Miguel's home, the place I believed he shared happily with Valeria. But now, it was nothing but chaos. Just like my heart. I set my suitcase by the old couch and walked toward Miguel's desk in the corner. Amid the clutter, a brown envelope lay crumpled. I picked it up, and my pulse quickened as I pulled out a stack of receipts. The first one made my blood boil. Yacht rental, Sea of Cortez, $150,000. Paid with Miguel Perez's credit card. The date was last week, while he was in the ICU. I turned to the next one, and the heat rose in my chest. Cartier jewelry, $195,000. Purchased just 3 days ago. I gripped the paper so tightly my nails bit into my skin. Valeria had spent the money meant for Miguel's care, money I sent to buy luxuries, while my son fought for his life. I took out my phone. One by one, I photographed every receipt, every date, every number. Each click felt like a knife in my chest. But I couldn't stop. I needed proof. I needed the truth, so I could face Valeria. I opened the video call app and dialed her number. The screen lit up, and there she was, standing on the deck of a yacht, the deep blue sea behind her, friends laughing loudly in the background. She wore a silk dress with a massive Chanel logo across the chest, oversized designer sunglasses, and a cocktail in hand. That image hit me like a slap in the face. "What's wrong?" Valeria asked, her voice distracted, as if I were interrupting her fun. I took a deep breath, forcing my tone to stay calm, though inside I was burning. "You know Miguel is dead, and yet here you are, living like nothing happened." Her face froze for a few seconds, lips pressed together. Then she shrugged. "I know. But he'd been sick for a long time. There was nothing I could do. His death was just a matter of time." She said it lightly, like she was talking about the weather. Not the death of her husband. Not the death of my son. My blood boiled, fire surging through every vein. You think I don't know where the money went? The money I sent to care for Miguel? My voice was ice. Yachts. Jewelry. Parties. I saw it all in the statements, Valeria. She arched a brow, a mocking smile curling on her lips. That money is mine too. We're family, aren't we? Family. She dared to call this family after letting Miguel die alone in a hospital bed. I stared straight into the camera, my voice turning to steel. This is the last party you'll ever pay for with my money. I hung up before she could answer. My hands trembled not from fear, but from the rage burning inside me. I couldn't let her keep doing this. I couldn't let her cruelty pass unpunished. I called Lieutenant Colonel Javier Ortega, an old army friend now working at the Military Financial Administration. Javier, I need your help, I said as soon as he picked up. Valentina, are you all right? What's going on? His voice was concerned, but I didn't have time to explain. I'm coming to your office right now. Please have the documents ready. An hour later, I was sitting in his small office, wood walls, the smell of old coffee in the air. I placed a stack of receipts on his desk, along with the financial power of attorney Miguel had signed before my last mission. Valeria spent Miguel's money, the money I sent to care for my son, on these. I pushed the papers toward him. He went through them one by one, his brow furrowing. What do you want me to do? He asked. Freeze Miguel's account. Now. Cancel every credit card linked to it. Transfer the remaining balance to me. Javier nodded without another question. He knew me, knew how I acted when things went too far. In barely 20 minutes, it was done. He handed me a receipt. The account is blocked. Credit cards cancelled. Funds transferred to your name. I nodded, feeling a small weight lift from my chest. But the pain stayed sharp, constant. As I stepped outside, my phone began vibrating non-stop. Valeria was calling again and again. I ignored her, but soon the texts and voice messages started pouring in. First, her voice was full of rage. What the hell did you do to the account? Do you think you have the right to ruin my life? Then her tone softened, turning pleading. Valentina, can we talk? I didn't mean any harm. I just needed the money to get by. Please, reopen the account. I'm sorry. I listened to every word. But I felt no compassion, not a drop. She never apologized for abandoning Miguel. Never even mentioned my son. She only thought about herself. I clenched my father's pocket watch in my hand. The cold metal reminded me to stay firm. The sun outside was just as bright as ever, but inside me, there was a storm. I went back to Miguel's house, determined to find more evidence, anything to expose Valeria. In my mind, I kept seeing Miguel in that hospital bed, his cold hand in mine, his weak voice whispering, "Mom, I love you." I couldn't let that be in vain. Valeria would pay not just for the money, but for the cruelty that stole my son's final days. He could have lived a little longer. I could have held him again. Heard his voice stronger. Not received his body the same day I came back from service, when my heart was still full of hope. I pushed the door open and stepped into Miguel's home, a hollow shell of what it once was. I set the plastic bag of his belongings on the dining table. The dim light fell on his wristwatch, his worn leather wallet, cruel reminders of reality. Miguel was gone. I pulled out a chair and sat down, opening the old military laptop I had carried through years of service. The cold blue glow of the screen lit my face. I took a deep breath, pushing the pain down. This was not the time to break. I needed to act. Using the emergency financial authorization Miguel had signed, I accessed his military bank account. The freeze order from Javier was there, confirmed. I checked every detail, making sure there was no loophole Valeria could exploit. I activated alerts to any withdrawal attempt would trigger an immediate notification to my phone. Only then did I feel a small relief, like I had built a wall of steel between Valeria and what rightfully belonged to my son. Next, I opened the account statements from the past 3 months. The numbers appeared cold and clear, an unspoken accusation staring back at me. $80,000, gone for a yacht party in the Sea of Cortez. $45,000, for one extravagant dinner in Los Cabos. $120,000, blown in a high-end boutique in La Paz. I went through each transaction one by one, every number slicing into me like a blade. That money was my sweat, my tears. Months of risking my life on the battlefield, believing I was providing for Miguel's well-being when in truth, I had been funding Valeria's vanity. And all the while, my son lay alone in a hospital bed, with no one to care for him. I took screenshots of every transaction, storing them carefully, both on an external hard drive and on the small USB I always carry. Each click was a promise to myself: Valeria will not get away with this. She will pay for every peso she stole, for every day she abandoned Miguel. I had just saved the last file when my phone vibrated. A bank's number flashed on the screen. Senora Valentina, a polite female voice began, "We've received a request to withdraw funds from a joint loan under the names Valeria Lopez and Miguel Perez. Do you authorize it?" I tightened my grip on the phone. "No. I do not authorize. Block the credit account immediately." The woman hesitated, then confirmed. "Understood. Done. Any other instructions?" "That will be all," I said, hanging up. Silence filled the living room. The only sound was the slow creak of the ceiling fan. Then I called Louis, an old friend from the telecommunications sector who had once helped me track devices during secret missions. "Louis, I need you to trace a number. Valeria Lopez. I want to know exactly where she is." He didn't hesitate. 10 minutes later, he called back. "Her phone signal is offshore in the Sea of Cortez. Probably on a boat. Do you want the coordinates?" I nodded, even though he couldn't see me. "Send them." "Thank you." Outside, the daylight had turned a soft orange. I locked up Miguel's house, took the keys to his old truck, the one I used to tease him about for being too old for a young man, and drove to the nearest supermarket. I bought water, canned food, and 3 brand-new heavy-duty padlocks. Back at the house, I changed the locks on both front and back doors. Each turn of the screwdriver felt like slamming the door in Valeria's face, shutting her out for good. I sealed each padlock with military tape and my own coded markings, a habit from my years in the service to detect tampering. While packing Miguel's scattered papers into a cardboard box, I found it an old leather notebook, the string loose, the cover worn. Inside, my heart clenched. Miguel's handwriting. Page after page, he had recorded the amounts he'd given Valeria, each one with a date and his signature. $30,000 March. For Valeria's medicine. $50,000 April. Repairs for the house. I flipped through, and many entries matched the exact dates of Valeria's luxury expenses in the bank records. She hadn't just spent my money, she had deceived Miguel, making him believe it was for the family's care. I sank into the chair, notebook in hand, realizing I had found the missing piece. This wasn't just evidence. This was my son's own account, his story of betrayal, written down but never told. I brushed my hand over the page. Tears slid down my cheeks. "I'm sorry, Miguel," I whispered. "I didn't know what you went through." But alongside the pain came a surge of resolve. This notebook was the key. The link that would force Valeria to face her guilt. I placed it in the box with the rest of the papers and looked around the house. His favorite reading chair. The photo of us on the mantel. The scent of old wood he used to clean every weekend. Valeria would never touch any of this again. Not while I still breathed. I clutched my father's pocket watch, the one that had been with me through so many battles. "This isn't over, Miguel," I vowed. "I will protect you even now." The next morning, I carried the box to my old naval base, where I still had access to a small office. Simple. A worn wooden desk, a few metal chairs, and the salty breeze drifting through the window. I set the box on the floor, opened it, and laid out every document. Bills. Bank statements. Miguel's notebook. Each paper was a fragment of truth, and I knew I had to arrange them with the precision of a Marine lieutenant colonel, not the grief of a mother. One by one, I cross-checked Miguel's handwritten notes against the bank records. The pattern emerged, cold, undeniable. Money Miguel gave her in cash, supposedly for medicine or house repairs, matched withdrawals from his own account. 50,000 May. 4 hospital expenses, Miguel had written. That same day, The bank showed a $50,000 payment to a luxury spa in Los Cabos. I gripped my pen so tightly my nails dug into my palm. Valeria had taken my money and Miguel's, all while pretending to care for the family. And then I saw it. The most revolting of them all. A $100,000 payment for a friend's birthday party, yacht rental, DJ, and open bar, dated the exact day Miguel was admitted to intensive care. I stared at that number, feeling my blood boil. While my son fought for every breath. Valeria was out at sea, celebrating. Valeria was out partying, laughing, spending, as if nothing was wrong. Inside me, pain and rage mixed into a storm that made me want to scream, but I didn't. I needed proof. Solid proof. The kind she couldn't deny. I took the military-grade scanner from the corner of the room and began my work. One by one, I scanned every page, bills, bank statements, even Miguel's handwritten notes in his personal notebook. I made 3 copies, one on the base's internal drive, one on an external disk, and another on an encrypted cloud service I'd once used for classified documents. Each time I pressed save, it felt like I was laying another brick in the wall of justice for Miguel. When I was done, I turned my attention to my son's phone, still sealed in the hospital's plastic evidence bag. The message folder had been wiped clean, but I didn't give up. I checked other messaging apps and, by some stroke of luck, managed to recover a few chat group conversations. One stopped me cold. Valeria had sent a photo of a Louis Vuitton bag, along with a message, "Just bought this with Miguel's money. That guy's not going to live much longer." Oh well. I read it again. And again. Each word cut deeper than the last. She wasn't just taking advantage of him, she was counting on his death. I kept digging, logging into Miguel's email using the password he and I had once shared for our joint accounts. In the sent folder, I found something else, a cruise booking sent from Miguel's account to an event company. The note made my blood run cold. Use Valentina's card. She won't be leaving the base for a while. And if she comes back, she'll have to let us know. I dropped into the chair, head in my hands. Valeria hadn't just been draining Miguel's accounts, she had planned everything, knowing I was far away and couldn't oversee a thing. She had built herself a life of luxury, brick by brick, on my son's pain. That afternoon, I carried all the evidence to Javier Ortega's office. "Valentina, what did you find?" he asked, his voice heavy with seriousness. I set the box on the table and began laying out documents and disks. "Everything's here: bills, bank statements, messages, emails." Valeria took Miguel's money and spent it, even while he was in the hospital. Javier skimmed a few pages, his jaw tightening. "This is enough to use as financial evidence," he said. "Do you want to go further?" My voice was steady, but my heart was burning. "I want her to pay, Javier. Not just for the money, for what she did to Miguel." He placed a hand on my shoulder, his eyes filled with empathy. "I'll guide you through filing this in court. But before you leave the base, you'll need a good lawyer." Following his advice, I called Armando Ruiz, a specialist in family financial abuse cases. "Mrs. Valentina," he said, his deep, confident voice steady over the phone. "Can we meet tomorrow morning? Bring all the evidence. We'll review it carefully." For the first time in days, I felt a flicker of relief. "Thank you," I whispered before hanging up. That night, I returned to Miguel's house and locked the door behind me. The sea wind pounded against the windows, carrying the sound of crashing waves. Inside, a sharp silence filled the air. I set the sealed documents on the table beside my father's old pocket watch, its worn glass catching the lamplight. I ran my fingers over it and whispered, "Miguel, Mama won't let you leave this world in vain." In my mind, the path forward was crystal clear. Valeria's biggest mistake was thinking I'd walk away quietly. She had no idea I was ready. Not just for justice, but for the love of my son. A love no one, not even her, could take away. The next morning, I walked into the heart of La Paz, where Armando Ruiz's modest office sat tucked between low buildings. The crisp morning air was at odds with the heaviness in my chest, heaviness made of grief and fury. With the evidence box under my arm, I pushed the door open. Inside, the office smelled faintly of old paper and ink. A neat stack of case files sat on a wooden desk beside a steaming cup of coffee and a sharp red pencil. Armando, mid-40s, firm posture, sharp eyes, stood to greet me. He shook my hand firmly, reading the pain in my face without me saying a word. "Mrs. Valentina, please, sit," he said, his voice deep but warm. I placed the cardboard box on the desk and carefully pulled out 3 well-organized folders, bank statements, invoices, and data from Miguel's phone and email. "This is everything I have," I said, my voice dry and restrained, even as my heart clenched at every mention of my son. Armando nodded, opening the first folder. He scanned each page with precision, eyes lingering on the cruel messages Valeria had sent. Occasionally, he would mark a line in red and mutter, "Illegal transaction, clear evidence of neglect." I sat silently, watching him work, feeling as though I was placing a piece of my soul in the hands of a stranger, trusting he could help me bring justice for Miguel. Finally, he looked up, adjusting his glasses. "Do you have Miguel's financial power of attorney?" I nodded and pulled it from my bag, the original, notarized at the military legal office, still bearing Miguel's signature. Before I left for my final mission, Armando examined the documents carefully, then nodded with quiet satisfaction. This is the key to taking control of her assets." He kept flipping through the file until his eyes stopped on 2 things: a yacht rental invoice, and Valeria's messages about a Louis Vuitton handbag. "Senora Valentina," he said, his voice sharpening, "I've seen many cases of financial abuse, but this," he shook his head, eyes flashing with indignation. "She's not just spending recklessly. She's exploiting her husband's illness, deliberately. This is calculated." For almost an hour, he went through every page before closing the file and locking eyes with me. "This case is strong enough to take to court. We'll request an emergency order to freeze her assets and seize administration of Miguel's estate. With what you've given me, I'm confident the judge will side with us." I nodded, feeling a ray of light pierce through my darkness. "She's on a yacht in the Sea of Cortez," I added quietly, firmly. "I have her location from a friend." Armando's smile was cold, his gaze sharp as steel. "She has no idea how fast we'll move. Valeria may think she can hide at sea, but the law doesn't wait." Leaving his office, I felt a small flicker of relief, but the ache in my chest still clung to me. I stopped by the courthouse. The air was thick with the smell of paper, the constant hum of printers filling the halls. I filed the request for the emergency freeze order and handed over the copies Armando had reviewed. A middle-aged court clerk with tired eyes took the documents and scheduled the hearing. "Within the next 72 hours. We'll notify you," she said. I thanked her and walked out. The sun in La Paz burned hot overhead, but I felt nothing but cold. Everything I did for Miguel. And yet, every step reminded me he was gone. That afternoon, I went to the military funeral home to finalize arrangements for Miguel's burial. His uniform was ready, deep navy blue, the same kind I once wore in my youth. The funeral director, an old veteran, placed a hand on my shoulder. "He will be buried with full honors, Lieutenant Colonel Valentina," he said, voice low and heavy. I could only nod, my eyes fixed on the folded uniform and its small medal gleaming under the light. I pictured Miguel wearing it, but instead of pride, the image carved a deeper wound in my heart. My son should have been alive, smiling beside me. By the time I returned to Miguel's house, night was falling. I unlocked the door, stepped inside, and saw a white envelope lying on the floor, pushed under the door. I picked it up and opened it. The handwriting was unmistakable, Valeria's. "Valentina, we can settle this between us. I need money to pay off debts. Please, don't take this too far." I read it again. Every word felt like a slap across the face. No apology. No mention of Miguel. No trace of grief. Just money. As if my son's death was nothing more than a minor inconvenience to her life of luxury. I folded the letter, slipped it into the evidence file, and decided she didn't deserve a single word in response. The morning of the hearing, I stood before the mirror in Miguel's house, wearing my dress navy blue uniform, the one I hadn't touched in years. The medals on my chest caught the light, each one a memory from my years of service. But today, I wasn't wearing them for glory. I was wearing them to face Valeria, and demand justice for my son. I fixed my hair, clutched my father's pocket watch, and stepped out into the salty wind rolling in from the sea. Inside, I carried nothing but cold, unwavering resolve. The courtroom was wide and cold under the harsh white glare of fluorescent lights. The old wooden benches smelled of dampness and time long gone. I walked in clutching the file to my chest, Armando by my side, calm but razor-sharp. Valeria was already there in a tight Gucci dress, hair perfectly curled, the latest iPhone in hand. Her makeup was heavy, her eyeliner sharp, but her eyes were performing exhaustion. Everyone in the room could see it. She wanted to look like a victim. The judge, a middle-aged man with a grave face, called both sides to present their cases. Armando rose, placing the thick file on the table, each section lined up like a weapon. Your Honor, we have clear evidence of financial abuse and neglect of marital responsibilities by Mrs. Valeria Lopez toward her husband, Mr. Miguel Perez, he began, his voice firm. He projected bank statements on the big screen, luxury spending, yacht rentals, exclusive restaurants, expensive jewelry. Then, duplicated invoices proving Valeria withdrew funds even after Miguel had given her cash. Finally, photos from her social media, Valeria, smiling on a yacht, cocktail in hand, while Miguel lay in intensive care just miles away. I sat frozen, each image cutting deeper. I could still hear Miguel's weak voice. Mom, I love you. Then the long, unbroken tone of the heart monitor. Valeria hadn't just taken the money. She had stolen Miguel's final days he might have lived, if he'd had proper care. My fists clenched, nails digging into my palms, holding back tears. Then her lawyer stood. A young man in a shiny suit. Your Honor, these expenses are within my client's legal rights as Mr. Perez's wife. And his illness was irreversible. You cannot hold her responsible, he said smoothly. But as he spoke, Valeria avoided my eyes. She knew the truth. And I knew she wouldn't be able to deny it for much longer. Armando stood and asked to call a witness. Moments later, Dr. Julian, the man who had treated Miguel, walked in. He faced the court, his voice deep yet steady. If Mr. Perez had been admitted earlier and received proper care, he could have lived 1 to 2 more years. But no one ever contacted us. No one visited him during the 2 weeks he spent in the ICU. The room went still. I watched Valeria lower her head, clutching her iPhone as if it could hide her shame. The judge turned to me, signaling that it was my turn to speak. I rose slowly, my military uniform heavy on my shoulders yet giving me strength. I looked straight at Valeria, then at the judge. My voice trembled, but it was steady enough to carry the weight of my words. I was away, protecting my country. I sent money, trusting my son was being cared for. But no one has the right to use my absence to kill my child. The silence that followed was suffocating. Only the faint sound of breathing and the scratch of the court clerk's pen broke the stillness. Valeria's head sank lower, yet I could see it, not a shred of remorse in her eyes. The judge nodded, reviewed the file once more, and declared, the court orders the immediate freezing of all assets belonging to Mr. Miguel Perez. Temporary administration of the estate will be granted to Mrs. Valentina Perez. Mrs. Valeria Lopez is hereby prohibited from accessing any property or residence of Mr. Perez until further notice. The sharp crack of the gavel was like a full stop to the hell Valeria had put us through. She shot to her feet, her face burning red. You'll regret this, Valentina. You can't do this to me. Her shrill voice echoed off the walls. But the court officers moved in quickly, escorting her out. I watched her go, her Gucci dress swaying as she disappeared through the door. And for the first time, I felt a small piece of justice. But that didn't erase the pain. Miguel was gone. And the cruelty Valeria had inflicted would remain a scar on my heart forever. I gathered the documents, placed them carefully in my briefcase, and walked out. The midday sun in La Paz blazed down, reflecting off my uniform and making my medals shine. But I didn't feel pride. I didn't feel triumph. Only a quiet relief, a sense that I had kept my promise to Miguel, even if he wasn't here to see it. The trial was over, but I knew I couldn't rest. I couldn't let grief swallow me. Miguel's life had been stolen, But his legacy, his memory, could still make a difference. I drove straight to the bank, the court resolution in hand. The bank clerk, a kind-eyed woman in her 50s, reviewed the papers and looked up. "Mrs. Valentina, everything has been transferred to your name. How would you like to manage these funds?" I took a deep breath. "Divide it into 2 parts. One to my personal account, and the other to create a fund." That same week, I registered it with the Social Development Secretariat of Mexico, the Miguel Fund. The idea had come to me back at the morgue, staring at Miguel's funeral suit. I wanted his name to stand for hope, for life, for those fighting the same illness that had taken him. I contacted San Rafael Hospital and other medical centers, asking for lists of cancer patients who had been abandoned or couldn't afford treatment. One of Miguel's doctors took my hand and said, "You're doing something invaluable, Mrs. Valentina. I'll help you in every way I can." In the first week alone, the Miguel Fund covered the cost of medication for 12 patients. I also signed a long-term contract with a mobile clinic to bring medical services to remote areas of Mexico, places where people like Miguel were too often forgotten. One morning, I drove to the provincial hospital of Sonora, a few hours from La Paz, to review the patient list the fund was supporting. The hospital air was heavy, the scent of disinfectant and the beeping of machines pulling me back to Miguel's last days. In the oncology ward, I saw a small boy sitting curled up in bed, clutching a worn stuffed animal, staring out the window. He looked about 8. His skin was pale from chemotherapy. The doctor introduced us. "This is Diego. He lost his parents in a car accident. He has leukemia, and has been living here alone." I sat beside him, smiling gently. "Hello, Diego. What are you doing?" He looked up, his voice barely a whisper. "I don't want to die. I just want a family." His words cut through me like a blade. His eyes, so clear yet filled with sorrow, were Miguel's eyes. Just like when my boy was small, holding me tight and asking when I'd be home. I took Diego's tiny, cold hand. "You're not alone," I said softly. "I'm here." The doctor explained that with continuous treatment and proper care, Diego could recover. Without hesitation, I used the Miguel Fund to cover all his medical expenses and hired a private nurse to care for him. A few weeks later, I returned to Sonora, bringing fresh oranges and a children's book I thought he'd enjoy. Diego looked better, thinner hair from chemo, but a brighter face. For the first time, he smiled. That innocent smile warmed my soul. I sat beside him, telling stories of rowing across the Sea of Cortez, of giant waves and blazing sunsets. He listened intently, stroking his stuffed animal. "Mrs. Valentina," he asked, "have you ever been afraid at sea?" I smiled and ruffled his head. "Of course. But I learned that no matter how big the waves get, if you hold the oar tight, you'll always reach the other side." Every visit, I brought his favorite treats, homemade flan, mango juice, chocolate cookies. I fed him spoon by spoon, wiping his mouth when he spilled. Those moments, they felt like I was caring for Miguel all over again. As if life was giving me back a piece of what I had lost. Diego began to open up more, telling me he wanted to be an astronaut and travel to Mars. "I want to see the whole world from above," he'd say, eyes shining. I'd nod, fighting back tears. "You will, Diego. I believe in you." One afternoon, as I prepared to leave the hospital, Diego took my hand, his eyes filled with hesitation. "Señora Valentina, ¿puede ser mi abuela?" The question from that little boy froze me in place, as if the whole world had stopped for a heartbeat. I looked into Diego's clear eyes, and in them, I saw Miguel's reflection. In that moment, I felt a small piece of my heart begin to heal. I stepped forward, wrapped him in my arms, and tears streamed down my cheeks. "Of course, Diego," I whispered. "I'll be your grandmother." He hugged me back with all the strength in his tiny body. His worn stuffed animal was squished between us, radiating the same warmth I felt from him. That very same day, I began the legal adoption process. I contacted the Department of Social Affairs, gathered every document, and started preparing a small bedroom in Miguel's house for Diego. I painted the walls navy blue, the color he said he liked because it reminded him of the sky. I bought a single bed, a nightstand, and placed his stuffed toy right on the pillow. Every step of that preparation was a silent promise to myself. I would never let Diego feel the same loneliness I once knew. Miguel wasn't just my son's legacy anymore, he had become the bridge that led me to this boy who brought light into my darkest days. 6 months after the trial, the phone rang. It was the doctor from the hospital in Sonora. "Señora Valentina," he said with excitement, "I have good news. Diego has responded well to treatment. His latest tests show no cancer cells." I froze in the kitchen, clutching the phone as tears ran down my face. Diego, the boy I'd met in a cold hospital room, now had a real chance at life. "Thank you, doctor," I whispered, my voice trembling. "I'm on my way." I packed quickly, taking with me a small gift, a blue wool hat I had knitted, hoping he would like it. The day Diego was discharged, I drove Miguel's old truck to Sonora. He stood by the entrance, thin, but with bright eyes, hugging his tattered stuffed animal. The moment he saw me, he ran with a smile as radiant as the sun. "Grandma," he shouted, leaping into my arms. I held him tight, feeling the warmth of his little body. And in that embrace, I saw Miguel's shadow. "Let's go home, grandson," I told him, ruffling his hair. We climbed into the truck. The distant sound of the Sea of Cortez reached us, and the salty, familiar breeze flowed in through the window. Miguel's house was now ours. Our first dinner there was simple but warm. I cooked tacos, Diego's favorite, with ground beef and homemade tomato sauce. Diego placed his stuffed animal gently beside Miguel's photo on the shelf. Then, with shy eyes, he asked, "Do you think Uncle Miguel would have liked me?" I smiled and placed my hand on his shoulder. "Of course, Diego. He would be so proud of you." He nodded, eyes shining, before taking a big bite of his taco, laughing when the sauce dripped onto his chin. I wiped his face, feeling a small but real joy, as if I were reliving the days I'd once shared with Miguel. Over the following weeks, I began transforming the house into our home. I painted the living room a warm sandy color to bring freshness and life. On the terrace, I planted red bougainvillea that swayed in the sea breeze. Out back, I hung a new hammock, Diego's favorite spot to read or watch the sunset. Miguel's things, his books, clothes, photographs, I stored carefully in a wooden cabinet. Not to forget them, but to protect the memory of my son. Each time I opened it, I touched his favorite jacket and whispered, "You're still here, aren't you?" The Miguel Fund expanded its work into the mountains of Oaxaca and Chiapas, helping dozens of cancer patients get early treatment, people who might have faced the same fate as Miguel if we hadn't reached them. Diego often sat beside me while I worked, doing homework or drawing. One day he handed me a picture, me in a military uniform, standing next to him, with the deep blue Sea of Cortez behind us. "This is you and me, Grandma," he said, pride lighting up his eyes. I hugged him, feeling my heart mend little by little in moments like that. Once a month, I took him along to volunteer with the Miguel Fund, bringing supplies and food to distant communities. He fit right in, running with the other children, handing out gifts with that radiant smile. "Grandma Valentina, can I bring more candy next time?" he asked, holding an empty packet of cookies. "Of course," I teased, "but only if you ask Grandma for permission first." Watching him laugh and play, I felt like a part of Miguel was alive again, watching over us from somewhere. I even joined the seniors kayak club in La Paz. Every morning, I paddled over the gentle waves, feeling the cool water on my hands, remembering the training days at sea. But now, I rowed for peace, something I never thought I'd feel again. Sometimes Diego sat on the shore, waving and shouting, "Row faster, Grandma. A fish is chasing you." I'd burst out laughing, my heart feeling lighter each day. Every afternoon, we tended to the little garden behind the house. He planted tomatoes, I grew aromatic herbs. Our first harvest filled an entire basket. That night, Diego helped me cook pasta with fresh tomato sauce. "This is even better than tacos, Grandma," he declared. And I couldn't help but agree. "Got it, here's your ending rewritten in fluent, cinematic English for voiceover, keeping the emotional depth and flow of your original." He spoke with his mouth full of sauce, and I smiled, gently ruffling his hair, feeling a simple kind of happiness I never thought I'd feel again. Every now and then, Armando would call to let me know that Valeria was still trying to file claims or demand assets. She just filed another request, but the judge rejected it, he said in his calm, steady voice. Don't worry, everything is under control. I nodded silently over the phone, ignoring all of Valeria's messages. She was no longer a part of my life, and I refused to waste a single second thinking about her. One morning, Diego came running from school, a diploma for top student in his hand and a smile as bright as the sun. Grandma Valentina, I got the highest grade in the class, he shouted, hopping across the garden. I was sitting in my old wooden chair, holding my father's pocket watch, the afternoon light glinting off its worn glass. Well done, Diego, I said, pulling him into a hug as his innocent laughter blended with the sound of the waves. In that moment, I knew Miguel was still here, with every heartbeat of this new life I was protecting. That same day, I hung a new photo on the wall, right next to the one I had with Miguel. It was Diego and me, standing on the shore of the Sea of Cortez, in the exact spot where Miguel had played as a child. I pinned a note beside it, Miguel is always with us. I stepped back, looking at the two photos. And for the first time in many years, I felt I had truly come home, not just to a house made of brick and wood, but to a home built of love and hope. A home that Diego and I were building together, where Miguel would live forever in our hearts. This story is fiction, though it's inspired by real events. Names and places have been changed to protect the privacy of those involved. We don't tell this to judge anyone, but in the hope that someone out there might stop and think how many mothers are suffering in silence inside their own homes. So I wonder, if you were in my place, what would you do? Would you stay quiet to keep the peace? Or would you dare to face everything to reclaim your voice? I want to know what you think, because every story is a candle that can light someone else's path. God always blesses, and I truly believe courage leads us to better days. Meanwhile, on the final screen, I'll leave you with two of the channel's most beloved stories. I promise they will surprise you. And thank you for staying with me until the very end.